Oxtail is not a very widely used piece of meat or a cut of meat, but it is very, very tasty, also tasty. Hello my friends, and welcome to Dining with Viktoria. Today I'm going to be cooking oxtail for supper for my family. I don't do it often enough. It could be time consuming. Today I'm going to be cooking it in an Instapot. Before I use my Instapot, I'm going to be browning it in the oven. I haven't tried this before, I'll be honest with you, but I have a feeling it'll work out just fine. The reason I chose to do it in the oven is because browning on the frying pan takes an additional amount of oil to use, and I don't want to do that. Oxtail is fairly fatty piece of meat, and I'm going to utilize that fat with no additional oils. I'm going to chop my carrots in big chunks while I'm talking to you, and I have some garlic, fresh garlic and ginger to use, and onion, and that's how I'm going to start my my dish. So, going back to my meat. I'm going to put the carrots away for a minute and bring the oxtail. I've rinsed and drained oxtail from blood. It's nice and clean. The pieces are a little too white for my taste, so what I'm going to do is cut them or split them, meat obviously only, like that, so it cooks faster, and I find it's tastier if they're cut a little bit on the side like this. I'm going to put salt and pepper on the meat before I put it in the oven. Some seasoning, not a lot, because I will be doing a broth, or making a broth I should say, and all of that is all of the rest of the seasonings and herbs and spices are going to go in the broth. But first thing first, my oxtail. I'm going to use Worcestershire sauce for flavor and a bit of mustard. Again, just a little bit to start with. I'm going to be using more mustard in the broth. Salt and pepper. Freshly ground pepper. Some salt. Not going crazy on the salt because Worcestershire is fairly salty. And I'm going to use a couple of tablespoons of flour, drenched in flour, so that'll help to thicken my broth eventually, and it's going to help me brown my meat. Okay, so the difference today is I'm going to put onion on the bottom of the pan. Instead of browning my onion first, I believe it'll brown in the oven with the meat. And I'm gonna spread carrots on the bottom of my pan. And then I'm gonna put some garlic, just squished, and basically I just use a knife, chunks like that, on the meat and on the vegetables. And I will use some fresh ginger. So 3 rounds of ginger, coarsely chopped, on the meat. Alright, so that's my meat and my vegetables. Like I said, oxtail is a fairly fat piece of meat, so I believe that it's going to be enough fat in this meat to brown my carrots and my onion nicely. I'm going to put it on broil to start with for about 5-7 minutes, 5 minutes probably. and when it's nice and brown on one side, I will turn it over and continue browning it. In the oven it goes. When I put stuff in the oven on broil, I always put my timer on because I tend to forget, and broil is broil. It's 550 degrees, so it could get crispy in there. So I'm gonna put timer for 5 minutes. There we go. Timer 5, start. Oxtail is out of the oven. It's nice and brown. Vegetables are a little bit brown. I like it a little more brown, so we will put it back in the oven on broil for about 2 minutes. But first I'm going to start on my broth. Like I said, I am cooking in an instant pot. It takes less time. It's pressure cook. It's tasty, and I like it. For the broth, I'm using about half a cup of wine. Red wine. It's just a regular, whatever we have in the house, wine. I'm using some blended or chopped parsley, about half a cup of that. For herbs also, I'm using rosemary and thyme and bay leaves. 3 to 4 bay leaves, some fresh rosemary and some fresh thyme. Putting it all in. I'm going to put about 1/3 of a can of tomato paste. Wine and tomato paste goes, I find it goes quite nice. And I will use some plain water, about 3/4 of a liter water for my broth. Not a lot of salt and pepper is going to go in because I've used some Worcestershire sauce, and we can adjust the seasoning a little later. I'm going to put, oxtail is nice and brown on all sides. And it took 7 minutes on each side to brown it. So all in all, it took 14 minutes to brown oxtail. I didn't have to watch it really. I put a timer on, and I was doing other things. So vegetables are a little bit pale to my liking. So I'm going to put it in the oven on broil again for about 2 minutes. In the meantime, timer, Vicky, timer, 2 minutes. Okay. In the meantime, oxtail is covered in my in the water, in the broth. I'm not going to put any more liquid in the pot for now, and I'm going to use a pressure cooker button. Probably can't see it, but just trust me on that. I will press the pressure cooker button, and I'm going to cook it for 45 minutes. So in the fact, it'll take a little longer because the steam is going to be escaping, and that takes 5, 7, 10 minutes, whatever that could be. And we'll test it for doneness, and we'll take it from there. More to come into the pot afterwards is mushrooms. I have portobello mushrooms. I have regular button mushrooms, brown and white. And I think I have a third kind of mushroom. Let me look in the fridge, and I will let you know after I put my vegetables in. So it's been a minute, a little over a minute. I'll check my vegetables. I think they're doing great. I think that's what I wanted, a little browner. I'm gonna clear off the oven. put my vegetables in the pot. It's hot. Careful, Vicky. With all the juices and all the goodness that goes in, and no additional fats or oils. Perfect. And start cooking. There is enough liquid in there, there is enough vegetables, enough taste to start with. Timer end. Okay. I have turned this around so that you can see, and now okay. Pressure cook 45 minutes. Start. We'll see you in a little while. 45 minutes later, I opened the Instant Pot and I will skim the fat before I even check the meat for doneness. All of the fat, or most of the fat, needs to be scooped out, and I like using ladle. Even if I do lose a little bit of juice in it, it's fine as long as I get rid of all the fat. And it smells good. Nice color also. Looks like meat is very, very tender. So if that's the case, I'm gonna remove meat from the pan because I still have a big bowl of mushrooms to cook, and I peeled a couple of potatoes, so I'd like to do that. All right, let me check for meat, how tender it is. Yeah, it's very tender. I don't want it overcooked. I don't want it mushy, so I'm going to remove my meat. Looks good. We'll adjust the seasoning. Put mushrooms and potatoes in and cook for additional 20 minutes. That's how long it takes to cook a whole potato. And my dinner is ready. All right, so potatoes. And mushrooms. So I have 3 types of mushrooms. I have shiitake mushrooms, I have portobellos, and I have just button regular white and brown mushrooms. It looks like a lot of mushrooms, but they cook out, and there isn't going to be that much in the end, just enough. My family loves mushrooms. Mushrooms give it a good taste, high in zinc, and it's a good food all around. Okay, my mushrooms are in. I haven't tasted the broth. I'm gonna taste my broth. See if it needs a little salt or pepper. Give it a good stir. I wouldn't add anything. I think this is pretty good. Just mix it around, give it a good stir, and put the lid back on for 20 minutes, and we'll check in 20 minutes. Again, I'm going to put it on pressure cook, 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, looks like everything is ready to go. Potatoes looks very done. They're still whole, not falling apart, but nice and tender. Looks like it anyway. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take it out on the platter garnish it with mushrooms. And I've chopped some or cut some red pepper, julienne cut. It will look very pretty on the platter. Give it a nice contrast. Mushrooms are nicely done. Gravy is nice and light, not too thick at all. I'm gonna put meat right on top. It's ready to serve. It looks delicious. I'm gonna garnish it with some red pepper, julienne cut, and some fresh cilantro. And bon appetit. I hope you will enjoy this. I know my family will. I thank you for joining me, and we'll meet again soon. Ciao, ciao.